Hi, fellow tea lovers. Settle in, because we've got a story. I'm Nell.
And I'm Rose, and today we're bringing you the tea.
Across era. Once upon a time, King Peleus of the city of Phthia, or you can also pronounce in English as Phthia, was getting married to a sea nymph, Thetis. They would go on to have a son, the famous Achilles. Why are you smiling at me like that?
I'm sorry, I've always pronounced it Peleus in my head, but I have no basis on knowing whether that's right.
That is why approximately 10 minutes ago, I looked them up.
You know how you read words and you imagine them a specific way, and if you don't hear them out loud very often, I thought malevolent and malevolent were two different words as a child.
I can see why. I mean, think about words like kernel. It's spelled colonel.
I'm sitting here thinking kernel of corn? No, that's pretty intuitive. No, but yeah, exactly.
Well, I did look it up right beforehand. The city of Phthia, the dude who was saying it on YouTube, said that one sounds closer to the original Greek, but a lot of Americans pronounce it, or I'm not Americans, a lot of English speakers. We have that whole 3 international audience. Shout out Germany, I see you. Anyways, Phthia. So they were getting married. This was their wedding, and in the future they were going to have a son, the famous Achilles. So the wedding feast was a lavish affair attended by many of the Olympian gods. They didn't invite Eris, probably because it says she was the god of discord or strife, and I suppose that's not really something you want at your wedding. So this goddess of discord and or strife is obviously pissed that she didn't get invited to the wedding. Maybe she's mad at Zeus though, because Zeus was actually the one throwing the banquet, and he's like the dude of all dudes, so I assume he's in charge of the guest list, which probably makes sense considering. So Eris is like, obviously homie, I am here. She shows up anyways with a golden apple that is now referred to as the apple of discord. That's probably where I think Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty got it.
That's definitely a little nod.
Yeah, because you know that Sleeping Beauty was in the 14th century, as Prince Philip told his father that he was too old-fashioned. It's the 14th century now.
This is, of course, the canon of Disney, because obviously that's the baseline we all have.
Yeah, the live actions or whatever, but those aren't for me.
That classic Sleeping Beauty, I think, was always my favorite. Like the art
best
was
art. The art was the most amazing thing. So, this apple of discord, she decides to drop this apple intentionally among the wedding guests. Inscribed on this golden apple was something that translates to either like for the fairest or maybe like to the most beautiful.
Right. Give me to the most beautiful.
Yeah. And wouldn't you know, like these 3 goddesses who are in attendance find it. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. And they're like, I'm the most beautiful, blah, blah, blah. Because, even women who are powerful goddesses are still only as good as they look, clearly.
Especially in mythology, they're embodying certain core pieces of humanity. That's how humanity is explaining these things to themselves. And so they're embodiments of virtues or vices. They're always going to be an amplified version of what a human person might do.
That is so true. So these 3 goddesses are like, hey, this dude, Paris of Troy, come over here and choose who's the most beautiful. But each of them bribed him. Nobody was just like, fair contest, take your pick, obviously. So they bribe him, and he ends up choosing Aphrodite. And he's like, you're definitely the most beautiful immortal woman in the world. And then from there we get the Trojan War. Because he chose Aphrodite because she was like, as a prize, you can have Helen of Troy. And I'm pretty sure that Helen of Troy wasn't an available prize to be given. What do I know?
But that's actually why the Trojan War happens just as much as the Apple of Discord, because when Helen, who is acknowledged as the most beautiful human woman in the world, also demigoddess, supposedly daughter of Zeus, I'm sorry, Swan. This is Leda and the Swan. This is the 3rd time that's come up this week.
Second time today.
Right, so the story is that Zeus sees Helen's mother and magics himself into a swan because for some reason that's more palatable. And she gives birth to 2 eggs, one of which Helen emerges from, and then the other, her brothers, the twins Castor and Pollux. So she's universally acknowledged to be the most beautiful woman in the world, also a daughter of Zeus, which is desirable in its own right. And of course, every Greek king wants to marry her. But of course, they've all sworn to declare war on whoever gets to marry her because he got what we wanted and they'll just take her back. There's no way to choose someone without starting a war. And so Odysseus comes in and suggests the oath of the horse. And so they sacrifice a horse, and all suitors that want a legitimate claim to marrying Helen have to swear an eternal oath to defend the man who does become her husband. So it's essentially the first, NATO. This is proto-United Nations. Being. No, it doesn't matter at all. She is part of the prize package. You'll hear me say that a lot, but because women are thought of as the object, they're as important as the brazier, that you keep your feet warm with. It's the same monetary level. They all swear the oath of the horse, and her father decides to marry her to Menelaus, who is the younger brother of Agamemnon, he's not the king of Greece, but he's the most powerful, the most Landonian, the biggest army holding guy out there, and so it's a very good alliance. And so then when Paris comes along and says, hey, so there was this apple at a wedding, and I gave it to Aphrodite, and she said I can have you because of that. Which again doesn't really give Helen much of an anything in there. She's the apple that's getting passed along. So when Paris takes her, it invokes the oath of the horse, and it guarantees that the entirety of Greece is going to invade because they have sworn to the gods that they would do so.
I am shooketh.
The story, it's beautiful.
In the movie, in which Orlando Bloom's really good acting skills of a Paris who is quite pathetic. In that movie, Helen's married to an old guy.
It's honestly not an unfair depiction. He would have been quite a bit older than her, but you also have fairly low life expectancies, so old is relative in that regard.
True.
Dynastic marriage doesn't take cultural norms into consideration as much. Even Egyptians as a whole, ancient Egyptians were not necessarily into sibling marriage, but their royals absolutely were because you preserve the bloodline.
That's actually not even kind of what today's story is about.
Sorry.
No. I brought us that whole entire beginning to talk about women being judged for their beauty. So in general, I have to admit, I do think if you stand any average naked woman next to any average naked man, I would bet that the woman looks better. Just in general.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. I think just from an aesthetic standpoint, it's a more artistic sort of look.
Yeah, women are
angular,
smooth and curvy and voluptuous and womanly. And I am straight as they come, literally. Most of the time, bare dangly bits. I just think you guys would be so much better if you're tractable and smooth like Ken. Scientifically, I know that's not possible, but that's what I think.
Yeah, it's kind of an incongruous just set of textures next to each other. No, I get that.
Right. It breaks up the lines.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Anyways, so these three goddesses we just talked about, they had a fight over who was the prettiest. They're goddesses. Hera is Zeus's wife, and while I'm pretty sure that sucks, get a grip, girl. You could be doing other stuff.
Oh, Hera's famous for coming after Zeus's vibe blows. And it's you fucked my husband, your children are
they were mostly raped by your husband, weirdo.
It's a different set of parameters.
Right, she's always, jealous and petty. But again,
it's a power struggle, too.
Her.
When your beauty represents your value, then your power struggle is going to circle around your beauty. Those are the frameworks that have been set up for you. Because it sounds really petty. It sounds like, I just want to be the pretty girl. Sure, there's things out there that is the case. But
to the point where you're destroying other women who are pretty and maybe were raped by your husband?
Yeah.
Get a grip, girl.
Yeah, no, you're trying to grab the power structure that's been set up for you.
Exactly. So that's the thing. Can't blame her for this. But Aphrodite is one of the things she's the goddess of is sexuality. Homegirl, come on. You don't need to be in this contest. And, obviously you can't just Google, was original Greek mythology written by a man or a woman?
Oh, I actually have a vague answer for that. I mean, not written in terms of who's creating the story, because that's really oral tradition.
Okay.
Most of what we know about mythology comes from actually a very spare number of sources.
Homer?
Homer, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wrote him down.
Hesiod actually is one of my favorites. Theogony is an epic poem that kind of does a really nice little statement pinpoint of these are the gods and goddesses, and this is how our world was created.
Notice how Rose was my favorite. So circling right back to what you said, a lot of this is oral tradition. But was it men? I don't know. I actually tried to Google this, knowing I was not going to find an answer. But, I would just guess that it was men, but that's me putting my 2024 lenses on it, because I'm Obviously, if a woman was telling this, they would be like, me and all my friends are so powerful, and we literally overthrew Zeus. Bye!
There's a huge trend right now in the feminine perspective into mythology, which I adore. Madeline Miller, favorite at that.
I love her. She hasn't quite tackled, if given a 2024 mindset,
right.
would Aphrodite have been like, girl, I don't need you, you should do my OnlyFans.
Pat Barker did a pair of novels about the Trojan War, the Trojan Women and the Silence of the Girls, and they're rough.
I'm quite sure.
It's extraordinarily powerful writing that, again, brings home the whole I'm part of the prize package concept and what it actually feels like to be a human in that position. I just love that we're exploring that more.
So, yeah, with my 2024 lens, I'm like, it's only men who think that the only redeeming quality, even in a goddess, is how pretty she is. So that brings me to the title of today's episode, Crowns and Controversy, a History of Beauty Pageants. Okay, here's a very high level of overview of beauty pageants in America. We're going to structure this with high-level America. I'm going to talk about some of my experiences. Do you think I was ever in a beauty pageant? Don't answer. And then we're going to talk about some of the influences that created them. What I'm trying to say is we're going to skip around a little, as I hope you've come to expect from me. In the Americas, we are going to start with the 1800s, specifically around the 1850s. Newspapers began featuring beauty contests, and you could submit your photo to that. This is 1850. You did not take a photo on your cell phone and send it to them. You had to, find a photographer, pose, print it out,
You're automatically pricing it into higher society because they're the only people with photographers. What are you, own a camera?
Baby.
You millionaire?
And then by the 1880s, beach resorts start hosting bathing beauty contests. It's super controversial because swimwear is revealing. I would like to say my own bathing suit is less revealing than what people were in the 1880s, but it's just because I sunburn so easily.
At a certain point, the sunscreen bill gets a little too high.
Yeah, it's called a burkini, and it got it almost all the way down to my ankles. It covers my arms. It comes up to the base of my neck. It's amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So in the early 1900s, we have the birth of Miss America. First one held in 1921 in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Initially, it was conceived as a way to extend the tourist season beyond Labor Day. There was a focus on swimsuit and appearance. Early Miss American pageants emphasized physical beauty, with the swimsuit competition being the singular central focus. Obviously, they did face some criticism for their emphasis on only looks and perceived objectification of women. By the mid-1900s, things are changing up a little bit. In the 1930s, Miss America adds talent alongside the other things they do to showcase their skills and personality. In 1954, the Miss America pageant was broadcast on ABC. It made it a national phenomenon. I mean, how many people have actually watched a whole beauty pageant before?
I remember kind of wandering in and out of the living room. Definitely very freeform.
Interesting.
It was just on.
Inspired by the success of Miss America, regional and national pageants began springing up around the continent with different age groups and demographics. By the late 1900s, so starting in 1960, I guess that's late 1900s, there was a bit of a shift to include social moments. There was emphasis starting in 1960 on intelligence and advocacy, where they had the interviews and got to talk about social causes, world peace, blah, blah. They also start around that time, although nothing really happened with it, but concerns about body image and exclusion of ethnicities. That didn't really start seeing a big shift until the late 20th century. Also, at the end of the 1990s, alternative pageants began to emerge. So instead of focusing on your outer beauty, they focused on more on inner beauty, talents, and social impacts that you had. This is not what that episode's about, but I could go on and tell you guys, how much does that sound like shows like American Idol, So You Think You Can Dance?
Oh, we still pageant. We just broadcast.
Exactly. Oh, we still pageant. Have you ever attended a beauty pageant? And if I'm wrong, I apologize. I don't mean as a participant. Have you ever sat in the audience?
No.
And then just to clarify, have you ever been in one?
No.
Okay. I've never been in one. It's not really my thing, which is kind of weird considering how much I love the spotlight and social interaction and Everyone's clapping for me. Yeah, I also feel like that's a big area for me to make an embarrassing mistake. So I have attended between 20 and 30 as an audience member. I know that for most people that probably sounds wild, unless you're into pageant culture or you live in the south part of the USA.
I think we do have to clarify she's not a pageant mama.
No, I do have one kid, but I never put them in a pageant either. So I know that for most people, like I said, that probably sounds wild, but hear me out. I went to high school in this tiny, tiny, deep south small town. There was no stoplight, kind of tiny. When my high school boyfriend and I broke up, I'm pretty sure the ladies at the bank knew about it before I told anyone else. And I was only like super distantly related to them. So the thing is, it was a social outing. I had friends and classmates who I was friends with who were in these pageants, and I would just go attend because I wasn't old enough to drive for at least half of this, and it's a way to see your friends after school.
You're out and about. No, I grew up with a small town life too. Definitely a very different area of small town, but at the heart of it, when you're a teenager, would you like to do a thing? Yes. It's different than the thing I was doing at home. Let us go. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Right.
You're just jazzed about it.
So I dug out some of my high school yearbooks. I got my 9th grade yearbook and my 12th grade yearbook out. And I'm going to try not to dox myself, so I've changed a few names. But I counted up the number of pageants that we had every year. Keep in mind, I moved to the Deep South from Hawaii in the middle of 8th grade, and the culture shock is unbelievable.
I can't even. Those are such different environments.
Very, very much so.
Similar humidity, though.
Yes. So when I'm looking through my 9th grade yearbook, it was weird and an uncomfortable experience. I did not enjoy that. I had written, cute, besides so many basic white boys. Girl, who was I? So here's some things I found in the yearbook. In the senior section, they had, how schools will be like, Mr. and Mrs. Most School Spirit, or Mr. and Miss, I guess. So the seniors, when I was in 9th grade, had things like biggest flirt, cutest, most individualistic, which was just literally two people who weren't wearing those fake pearl button-down Western shirts.
Oh, yeah.
That was going on at that time. It was very weird. Also, they had best dressed. No, they just looked like they had left American Eagle. Okay, so the late 90s in the Deep South, it was uncomfortable. But I'm sure in a lot of other places it was, similar pageantry because it's not isolated just to the south. So in flipping through the yearbook, I come across the Mr. and Miss, I'm going to call it Hopesicles. Mr. and Miss Hopesicles. And then the girls in the pictures are all wearing gowns. So I don't know if it was something voted on. Then we have Mr. and Miss Citizenship, and the girls are not wearing gowns in those pictures. And, they're only kind of from the waist-ish up. But the men seems to be wearing suits. There's homecoming, which I think is a normal thing. And the girls are all wearing gowns, and whoever is their attendant or the dude who walks beside them. They're wearing suits. Then the yearbook moves into pageants. The first one is called Senior Miss. We'll call it Senior Miss Chattahoochee. In my high school, when I was in 9th grade, my high school was 7th through 12th grade in the same school. So it was Senior Miss, and that was 10th through 12th grade, girls only. And then we have Junior Miss Chattahoochee, also girls only, and that's 7th through 9th grade. Then we also have something called Beauty and Beau for each grade. So beau, is that your beau? Sweetheart?
Sweetheart, yeah, you're courting.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Beauty and Beau. Oh, when I got to the prom section, I was looking at the prom king and queen, and there were two pictures. The black prom queen and king, and the white prom queen and king. They were not labeled black and white. They were just both labeled prom queen and prom king with their names, but that's what the pictures were.
Oh, they just had two sets and no explanation.
This was, again, I'm old, approximately 1994.
Oh.
Old if you were born in the year 2000. Not old if you're my age. So when I saw that, I flipped back through all the Miss and Beauties and Beaux, and I realized that they were grouped, a lot of them were taken in small groups, usually 2, sometimes 3. But black people were always with black people, black men and women. And then there were a few where they were okay, this white person and this black person. But it wasn't they weren't just random assortment. It was very clearly the black people and the white people. So now I moved on to my senior yearbook. We still had Senior Miss Chattahoochee, Mess Chattahoochee, which was where the guys dressed like women, and it was a fundraiser for probably football. I don't know.
Like Powder Puff. Yeah, isn't it so interesting? Like, that's actually a really big cultural memory for a lot of real deep South areas.
Powder Puff wasn't really sexual like this Mess Chattahoochee really was. I mean, yes, it was like balloons and things like that, but still. And
goofy.
In retrospect, I found it hilarious. I don't know what I think of it now. I don't know. Side note, I then turned the page of my yearbook and there was a 2-page spread on prayer, which I am a Christian, but religion and school are supposed to be very separate if you are a public institution, which we definitely were, but it was a deep step. So my senior yearbook, I found that Mr. and Mrs. Hopesicle were nominated by the faculty, and then the whole school would vote on them. This is a small school like everybody. And then for Mr. and Mrs. Citizenship, that was nominated by the faculty, but then voted on only by the senior class. And then Beauty and Beau, it says each grade's Beauty and Beau were voted on by their classmates, but then a pageant was held in the evening.
Okay.
Right. So then there's also Junior Miss Chattahoochee, and by that point, that would have been 6th through 8th grade because the 6th graders had moved into the barracks while the middle school was finally being built, followed by 2 more pages titled WWJD, which I don't know if you know, those bracelets, it stands for What Would Jesus Do?
I have one from some box set of South Park that's WWBD, What Would Butters Do?
I love Butters.
It's not a bad watchword.
No. This is a little off, but I just had to tell you because it came up at Sunday lunch a while back. I usually have Sunday lunch with my mom, brother, and sister. And apparently there was a little kerfluffle with the Senior Miss Chattahoochee at my former high school recently. I'm not going to read you the Facebook post exactly, but it says that there was a situation with Miss Chattahoochee. They did not have enough participants. I think I saw in the comments that only 2 people had signed up. So it said we can either cancel it or we can open registration back up and we need at least 6 people to participate, 6 additional people. They said they don't want to cancel, they're trying, it's for high school only, grades K through 8 are fine. We don't want to cancel, we're doing everything we can.
That's one of those things where the tradition is just getting thin and people are trying to preserve it because they have dedicated their whole life to it. But yeah, traditions move on, they morph into other things. Yeah. It's hard to know when to let those things go.
Well, they have the pageant.
Good for them.
Good for them. I want to be super clear. I'm not making fun of that. I find the attitude towards it amusing, but it's a real thing. Like, people invest their whole lives into pageants, and it is a tradition. You should have seen what happened when my school's football team, about 2 years after I graduated, bought new uniforms. The school colors were a certain shade of green and white.
I felt that way about my band uniform after I graduated, absolutely hardcore marching band kid. Are we all shocked?
No.
But the uniforms we had were from the 70s, and so they were all like separate dicky and cummerbund and, all the braided everything.
I'm pretty sure my marching bands were from the 1770s.
Oh, yeah, no. And, but they finally replaced them afterward, and I remember being so sad not to see that crazy gaudy crap again just because it was such a good memory, even though it was a bitch to maintain.
Here's what happened. A couple years after I graduated, the football team got new uniforms. They had a big old fundraiser for it because despite the fact that in the 4.5 years I attended school there, and I think we maybe won 4 or 5 games that entire time, football was everything. I've never seen Friday Night Lights, but I presume it's a lot like that. So, the uniforms were a different shade of green. It was a little bit darker with white lettering and black pants. Way easier to keep clean, right? Do you know that the oldest people in town started fussing? That is not our color of green. This is our color of green. And we do not have black in our school colors. It is white and white only. And you know what ended up happening? They sold the pieces of the uniform $100 a piece. So for pants or a top. And if you paid that $100, you got to come to a bonfire and put it in there. If you wanted to keep it as like a souvenir, or if you liked the color, you had to pay $200.
Oh, that's
And they
brilliant.
sold every single piece of them and got new uniforms in appropriate pale green shade.
That is hilarious. Oh, just golf clap to whoever.
Tradition.
I mean, because of course, the older folks in the town, they're seeing their legacy being erased, even though it's actually just time marching forward as it do.
Right.
But then, whoever brilliant motherfucker thought of that.
Yeah, genius.
Genius. Like, all right, but you're going to pay to help fix it. Well, I'm not going to pay to fix it. Well, you will if we think up this little scheme.
Right. A lot of the comments on that post were actually very nice. It was like, if it's because of the fee that people can't afford to enter, I'm glad to sponsor a person. Yeah, it was a lot of nice stuff. So nobody said anything rude. But anyways, besides all those pageants at my school, I had a friend who went to a private school in the next town over. Fun fact, its founding in the mid-1960s, it was founded as a segregation academy.
Ugh.
Well, we also went to her pageants. They didn't have near as many. The class sizes there ranged from 4 second graders to 25 juniors. Also, if you didn't know, segregation academies, they're private schools, mostly in the South, that were created so that white parents basically didn't have to send their kids to the newly desegregated schools. So in the next town over, the one that's big enough to have a Walmart, they had a pageant called Miss Christmas on we're going to call it a Chattahoo. Christmas on the Chattahoo. So it was like Chattahoochee, but not quite.
It's the river, right?
Yes, I think Chattahoochee's a river. I think it's also an Alan Jackson song. It says, way down yonder on the Chattahoochee, it gets hotter than a hoochie coochie. So I was looking that one up, and to participate in that, you just have to be a girl who either lives in the county or you go to a school in the county. So I had friends in that, and I went to watch them do that. I found the entry form for last year's Christmas pageant, and it cost $50 to enter, and you had to submit 4 identical 5x7 pictures. And then there are multiple categories of this pageant: tiny, petite, little, junior, teen, and miss.
Which sort of implies it would be by size, but it obviously is not yet.
No, it's by ages, and then it moves into grades by kindergarten 5-year-olds. They also had to participate in the county food and toy drive by donating a gift card worth at least $20.
I think it's really awesome that it often gets linked to charity.
Yeah, that part's really nice. If you're going to sign up for this, you have to donate at least $20. Right. So I'm going to read you some of these rules. These are the rules for makeup. Grades kindergarten through 2nd grade, pale lip color only. Grades 3 through 5, light makeup, pale lip color, no eyeshadow. 6 through 8, same things but light eyeshadow. 9 through 12, tasteful makeup but no glitter. These are the rules for dress. Kindergarten through 12, holiday dress, pageant or heirloom type dress. I do not know what that means. No strapless. 3 through 5, holiday, pageant or party type dress, no strapless. 6 through 8, holiday, pageant or party type dress, no bare midriff. 9 through 12, evening gown, no bare midriff. I need to say shout out in here to my friend who's a hairdresser who for prom found this basically sarong from Victoria's Secret and had someone make a top for her, and it was like a sequin triangle bikini. She looked amazing. Oh, she's probably the reason for half these rules. You go, girl. And then the last rule was no contestant shall have any body art or body piercings except 2 piercings per ear.
Because you always have to grandfather that in because those are the moral piercings.
Right. Let's be real. Nose rings are so common. So the prizes for the tiny through teen categories are a crown and a sash. And then Miss gets those things plus a scholarship of $1,500 for first place, down to $200 for the third runner-up and for Miss Interview, which is probably like Miss Congeniality. So this is what I was thinking, and I know that this is not why people do it. Nobody does it for that small scholarship. Let's be real, okay? Mm-hmm. But I'm like, wait, $50 registration fee, $20 gift card. I'm assuming you're paying for your dress, and maybe you're doing your own hair and makeup. I don't know, and maybe getting the 5x7s wasn't a real expense. But at that point, you could have just taken the $200 scholarship, which might cover the cost of one book, and my entry money and gown, $200. Yay, I have it.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have had the experience. And I think people do still use it as a resume builder.
Exactly. And like I said, cool if you like it. I actually came across a situation very recently where my thought was, wow, if they had ever been in a beauty pageant, they would know what to do right now. Isn't that wild? I was at my niece's choir concert. I mean, they're high schoolers, but one of the microphones was not working very well. I could tell it made the person singing nervous, obviously, and they got quieter and quieter and quieter, and all I could think was those ladies knew how to project their voices.
I will say one thing that a very religious upbringing gives you is a supreme comfort with microphones.
Truth. So I tried to find the entry fee for Miss Chattahoochee, but I couldn't find anything. I did find Miss Houston last year had a $795 entry fee. Miss Texas had an entry fee of $1,195. And then Miss Emma Volunteer was $595, whereas Miss Alabama, which is different, was $495.
And with all of those entry fees, I mean, like, what is the actual amount of the scholarship on those ones?
That is a really good question. So, Miss America gets at least $50,000 in scholarship money.
Okay.
So that's good. Yeah. That could get you, 1 year at our university, or, a semester at Penn State?
Mm-hmm. It's a drop in the bucket, but at least you're holding the bucket.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, I mean, it's a nice amount. So, the entry fee for Miss America, it's not publicly disclosed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, isn't that wild? It varies a lot because, if you want to enter Miss America, I could be really wrong on this, but it seems like you, enter, and then it's go to your closest town's pageant. Win that to go to your state's pageant.
Right. It
Win
has
the
to
state's pageant,
steps.
You get to Miss America. So, It seems like a lot of the fees, your city of Houston is going to be $795, and then Miss Texas is $1195. Yeah. So Miss Universe is the same. They do not disclose their fee. But then the entry fees, a lot of times, aren't really what's making the huge dent in the budget. There are things like dresses, travel, coaches. So we're going back to the Greeks. The Greeks used to have a contest of physique called something like the Euandria. That was held yearly at an Athenian festival, and there were a lot of them. And this was a contest for men, though. The Euandria competition was actually mostly for teen boys. So it took place during a couple of certain festivals in Athens and other cities, and beauty and strength were very important. But some historians are like, it was also a celebration of manhood.
Which isn't wrong, but the aesthetic qualities of physique were far less gendered at that point.
Yes. Also, celebration of manhood is a gross phrase to me. So even though they're being judged on basically how attractive they were, history says it's an athletic competition. So they need to be pretty and fit and strong. Now you just have to be pretty and fit and talented and smart. So in the Euandria contest, the winners could get these cool prizes like a shield or ox. Personally, I don't want either of those, but I think for early 4th century BCE, that's probably a really good prize.
Oh, an ox? Yeah, no, that's where it's at. That's a good prize.
That leads us into the May celebration, which seems to trace its roots to a fertility party in ancient Rome, which eventually evolved into medieval Europe's May celebration, where they picked a May queen. There's a lot that happens in between.
Humans are made to celebrate at specific points in the year, and we always come up with a reason.
Oh, absolutely. So between those times of fertility party and May Day Queen, we've got things like the traditional day of Topsy-Turvy Day, like Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, where the ordinary people are crowned as Lord and Lady of the Day.
Lord of Misrule.
Yes. In Hunchback, Quasimodo's crowned, but then it all goes awry. Eventually, in Europe, the couple thing shifted down to kind of just the May Queen. So I found on this website, the British Newspaper Archive blog, it says, in 1867, it was here that the latter party of the month of May, that a May Queen was crowned.
And it's still a contentious competition today. When we got to see the Beltane celebration in Edinburgh in 2011, and we met some of the folks that had presented show plans that hadn't gotten accepted. It was very hotly contested. The person who got to play the May Queen. It's a serious competition.
Yes. Around 1867, it says that queen tended to be chosen by the vicar of the first class of national schools. I don't know what that means. But with the vote of her companions, she was chosen mostly for her good conduct. I found a picture of a postcard from 1914 that showed the May Queen and her court, and they were all schoolgirls, and at that time basically dressed as May Queen and court schoolgirls. Mm-hmm. And then, according to the city of Birmingham, on their webpage, it says, the May Queen is traditionally chosen by others in her village. And so, like we were just talking about, even though that version of the May Queen, the child or teen, it did have churchy connotations, obviously there was pagan lore involved. It wasn't just about the traditions or about Christianity. So the May Queen this is very vague, because I was reading this off a very vague website. it says that the May Queen would be awakened to fight off the Queen of Winter. So literally, that's like no more harmful than Easter Bunny. It's fine, right? Moving back around into the cost of pageants overall, I found some things that I thought were interesting because it seems more like a documentary would be like the real cost of beauty pageants. Fame and death, something like that. I found an article from 2017 where a woman said she spent over $12,000 in the Miss New York USA pageant, and she didn't even make it to the second round. Wow. At that time, the event had a $300 registration fee and a $1,500 participation fee. And let's say if you find a mid-price dress as like $500 or a $1,600 dress that's custom made. And honestly, that seems like a good price for a custom gown. $1,000 for a walking coach. Remember when I was talking about coaches? That would be a coach to teach you how to walk in a pageant. She spent, this lady who was in the Miss New York USA, spent $3,600 on a speech coach and $1,600 for her hair and makeup. Remember that show, Toddlers and Tiaras? Did you ever watch any of it?
No, I remember people talking about it.
So my kid was 10-ish then, and they were so fascinated by the show. I think they were kind of freaked out by like how bad some of the kids acted. One of the people in the pageant who, during the Toddlers and Tiaras, like big popular days, was a little girl named Eden Wood. Her mom said during some time of the show that she thought she'd probably spent at least $70,000.
And what kind of return are you getting back on that? It's not monetary. You better hope
not for most people. Eden, remember, $70,000. Eden retired from pageants at around age 6.
Good for her, to be honest.
She's probably, I think, 19 now, maybe. She was an adorable little girl. She's still a super cute teenager. Has so much money. And honestly, what I remember the most about Eden, I think around the time she was retiring, it was only to branch out into other things. So her mom had her record a song. Girl, I Googled it, and the song is labeled as like hip-hop rap. It is not. It's the 6-year-old singing a song called Cutie Patootie.
That's the cassette every one of us has in a shoebox somewhere going, the wheels on the bus go round.
Toddlers and Tiaras also gave us Honey Boo Boo, who I would say probably has the most name recognition of the whole show.
I didn't actually realize that was where she came from.
Oh yeah. She was so sassy, but she was so cute. You couldn't help but adore her, and she would drink her go-go juice before a pageant. Dude, it was like Mountain Dew with pixie sticks poured in it.
Oh my god.
There's also tragedy that comes out of these things. There was a young lady named Kalia Posey, and she's probably the most recognizable as a meme of her when she was like 5 or 6 smiling. She has this really adorable big grin on. It's like a very popular gift. But she actually did her first pageant at 7 days old. She did take her own life at 16, which was not that long ago. A few of the people in the show use their fame to pivot into work that actually has given them success. Mostly that gets overshadowed by the controversy of like child beauty pageants. It's very similar to having your kid on social media right now. Do the kids like it? Do the kids even want to be part of it? Is it exploiting them? Is it sexualizing them? Yeah, Toddlers and Tiaras focused on pageants that weren't the natural pageants, but they were very glamorous beauty pageants. The children would have like full makeup, wigs, hair extensions, custom gowns, loads of jewelry, spray tans. Most of them had flippers, which are basically like fake front teeth to cover if you had like, when your baby teeth fall out, you have a gap and then one grows in and it's like weirdly big. It hides that. There were outfits that were definitely adult-like, midriff showing, no straps. There was the very infamous 3-year-old whose mom dressed her like Julia Roberts' character in Pretty Woman. There was a kid in Dolly Parton with like fake boobs and a fake booty. It's a lot there, and there's a lot of controversy on that now. I just heard a podcast on Annie Elisa's podcast 10 to Life about a lady on TikTok who has her daughter on there, and the title of it was like so and so sexualizing her 4-year-old on TikTok in the title, and it's bad. And of course I haven't seen the TikTok. I've only seen like what people have pulled from it, which. So other countries also have very strong beauty pageant cultures. Strong as in the South. In the Philippines, for example, their first recorded pageant was in 1908. The pageants are supposed to serve as platforms for your beauty, your talent, your intelligence. And in the Philippines, they also say they like to promote social causes, cultural heritage, community development projects. And I'm not trying to do other countries dirty, but I'm also not trying to make a 12-part episode. So I'm going to give you like a breakdown of some other countries with a big beauty pageant presence, okay? So Venezuela, long-standing obsession with beauty pageants, has produced quite a few title holders for international competitions, Miss World and Miss USA. Colombia, they have a very big beauty pageant culture, always have contestants in the international competitions. In India, beauty pageants are super popular, and the winners often achieve a celebrity status. The country has also won multiple titles in Miss Universe and Miss World. Brazil, very strong tradition of beauty pageants, and I think if you think about like stereotypical pictures you see of Carnival, yeah, I can see how they would like beauty pageants. They're very gorgeous. They also send a lot of people to global competitions. Thailand has a pretty dedicated fan base, and their pageants also get into the international competitions. We also have Mexico, big beauty pageant industry, and when I think of quinceañeras and those gorgeous dresses that they get, I'm like, yeah, I would want to dress up too. I could see that. Russia also has been gaining popularity with beauty pageants, and they've also had success in Miss Universe and Miss World. So, that's a lot about beauty pageants. And there's not anything wrong with beauty pageants, I don't think. I don't want to enter one, but I've attended a zillion. The people are happy. That's the important thing, I think. If you're being forced into it, not cool. If you are under the impression that you're only as good as like the crown you've won, that's not true. We're all so much more than that. I like now that there's more emphasis on overall package. They want you to know a few things. The thing is, like with kid pageants, I don't feel qualified to get into that because some kids are like, yeah, I loved it. I always loved it. And some kids feel forced into it. That part sucks. But I think the important thing is just looks aren't everything. But it's fine if that's your interest. It's cool. That's all. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.